something that we work with a lot in understanding behaviours of our customers and also ourselves, and how we can highlight and showcase our business, our behaviours to attract those customers that we really are in a way targeting, but they're ideal for us and in an ethical sense for the way that we run our business, the way that we want to do business. So just a little bit about me. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. For those of you, I know there's a lot here that actually know me, which is fantastic, and it's great to see you. But those that don't, just want to put a little bit of context, put it in context of some of the things that I have done, and also from an academic sort of experience perspective. So you've got a bit more of an understanding of where we're coming from. So I do a lot of work in sales psychology and business psychology, a strategist as a sales psychologist, a lot of work in the neurospace, so neuroscientist, and I do a lot of leadership psychology as well. My background is medicine, neuroscience, behaviour economics, and you will get a touch of that today as we dive into a little bit of that before we step into the world of archetypes. University of Sydney, I'm a Harvard grad. I mean, a lot of you have seen my LinkedIn profile. There's a lot of work that I have done in that space. An honorary clinical fellow at Queensland University of Technology here in Australia, up in Queensland. I'm an author. A lot of you have copies of my books. Do a lot of speaking, and you'll see that today that I do a lot of speaking anyway. But there will be, I speak globally actually on topics like this. I have a PhD in business neuroscience and basically cognitive neuropsychology in business, so understanding consumer behaviors, which is what I love teaching and what I want to teach all of you. And I'm also a director of on the board of EWIT. So EWIT is a national not-for-profit. It stands for Empowering Women in Trades, and it's basically encouraging women to pick up the tools, giving them the opportunities to step into the world of plumbing or, being an electrician, whatever they want. And it's not something that we go by in terms of quota. It's just providing opportunities for people if they want to. Okay, so moving on. What is it that we actually do? And before I step into this, I think there's more people that have come into the room. So I'm just going to, excuse me. Oh, I admit, excellent, to the room. So what is it we do? So what's really important for us is that we work. We help teach the skills, the strategies. I think someone might have their microphone on. If you don't mind muting, that would be great. If you don't mind, guys, if you could please mute your microphones, that would be great. Thank you. So we help teach you the skills, the strategies, and the tactics to ethically influence people, customers, and your clients, and amplify growth using behavioral science. That is the crux. That's the basics of what we do. And we use that to get under the skin of people and understanding the way they behave and the way that they think. And we use those to our advantage. Again, I stress it's all ethical. A lot of people will say to me, oh, Leanne, it's part of manipulation. It's not, because it's a win-win situation. It's something that is great for us, but more importantly, it is great for your people, for your customer, for your client, for your business. And that's what we need to concentrate on, that it actually isn't about us, it's about them. By understanding people's cognitive biases and the heuristics they use to make decisions, we can use those elements to influence. It's all about impacting people. It's all about creating the best world and the best people around us to solve their problems and to use our genius and expertise in a way that benefits people like no other. So what I want to talk about today is understanding a bit of the fundamentals of behavioral science and psychology, just to set the tone and the text of what we are going to then go into in terms of archetypes. So you've got a bit of a psych understanding. We're going to learn how to use archetypes to influence and apply these principles to your business and your world. So the first question I like to ask is, why do people behave the way they do? And our decision-making process is not as rational as we might think. In fact, it's not rational at all. I was only doing a keynote last week in leadership psychology. People go, of course we know we're rational. We're actually not, because there are so many biases and so many environmental factors that come into it that we are subconsciously influenced, and so are our customers. So we're actually not that rational. But to break that down, we talk about some unconscious drivers. And these are what our environment holds for us. So we talk about 3 areas of excellence in that space: behavioral science, psychology, and behavioral economics. So I want to just break those down a little bit in terms of definition to get an understanding. What is behavioral science? Basically, it's the understanding of why people behave the way they do. Psychology is understanding why people think and behave the way they do. Behavioral economics, sometimes called neuroeconomics, is understanding the effects of certain factors such as psychological, cognitive, emotional, and cultural factors, and how they influence human behavior, human thinking, and then the desire or the decisions to purchase. So that transaction that happens down the track is what the economical behavior is about. So there's 3 fundamental principles that I talk about. This is the way our brains work. And when it comes to making decisions, and this isn't just business decisions or transactions, these are decisions that we make every single day. Doesn't matter what the situation is, what we need to decide. These 3 factors are paramount. We are all irrational. We actually don't know what motivates people. Sometimes we don't even know what really subconsciously motivates us, but we need to know. No one likes to think. And you might think, oh my gosh, Leanne, of course we like to think. We think every day, and we do think every day. And believe me, with a lot of the works that we have achieved and what we do, of course we think, but we don't actually like doing it. It's hard work. So what do we do to help ourselves? We make decisions subconsciously. So 93% of our decisions are subconscious. You hear me talk a lot about that 93%, because 93% of all decisions are made emotionally. There's basically 2 ways that we make decisions: emotionally and logically. That's it. We want a problem solved and we want to feel good. It's us that overcomplicates the situation, overcomplicates the process. Actually, very, very simple. There's 2 reasons. 93% is emotional, 7% is logic. So to give you an example, I love shoes. I love accessories. I love fashion. It's my sort of, go-to, just to have, when I want to, move away from, all the academic stress. I love shoes. So I go into a shop. I want to buy a pair of shoes. I see them. Do I need a pair of shoes? Of course I don't. I've got 100 in the cupboard. They're all different colors, all different shapes. I don't need another pair, but I love them. So when I see them, it's an emotional pull. And I go up to them and go, oh, geez, they're really nice. I would love those. As I said, I don't need the shoes. But what do I do then? I justify and I go, okay, I haven't got that color. That heel is thicker, so I can run around the city and wear them. I'm going to be comfortable. I'm not going to get blisters when I'm going from meeting to meeting. They're on special. Awesome. My husband, actually, he's at work today, so I can get them home and hide them before he gets home. There's all these things that we do to try and justify and create logic, and using that to make that decision. That's what we do all the time. It's not just about the pair of shoes, and though for me that's important. It's everything we do. But we're also accidental liars. So there was a very a famous TED Talk, a behavioral designer actually did a TED Talk, and she asked everyone in the auditorium to put their hand up who washed their hands after they went to the toilet. Of course, everyone just shot their hand up straight away and went, me, 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 me. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And she actually said, you're all accidental liars. The behavior that we expect is that we wash our hands after we go to the toilet. That's the taught behavior. That's what we're conditioned to do, and it's the right thing to do. But she's also said that unfortunately there are people that have put their hand up that haven't. So we tend to behave and subconsciously in ways that are expected of us. So not only is it emotional, there is a certain amount of logic that we then do to justify, but we also look at the surroundings around us and what is expected of us. So in a way, we make decisions that we may not want to make. There is another tool or bias called anchoring. This is where our decisions are influenced by the first information we see. And I actually do a lot of this work in sales psychology when we're purely talking about sales, not just about archetypes. So this famous roulette study that Daniel Kahneman, you may have, and there's a number of people I will refer to today on my website. There is recommended reading. I get asked a lot, what are some books that we can read to validate all of this and also to learn some of these principles and understand better. Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, phenomenal book, won a Nobel Prize. It's a bit of a chubby book, but it's a great book. He's done a lot of research, a lot of study. There's one called the roulette study. And what he did is he had two cohorts of participants and he had two roulette tables. Different times, he got one to come in. The ball was fixed on number 10. The second group, the ball was fixed on number 65. And then he asked a random question. He asked, how many Africans are on the Committee of the United Nations? Something totally random that didn't even make sense to the context. And those in the group where the ball was fixed on 65 answered 75% higher. And that is because they were what we call primed with a higher number. So they had the 65 number as opposed to the 10. So they automatically and subconsciously answered higher. So these come into play every single day in when we are doing business and when we are actually making decisions as a consumer or a client to purchase. Cognitive load, believe it or not, our brains are metabolically expensive. They burn a lot of calories, more than what you realize. The capacity of our brains to process information. We have limited working memory at any given moment, and we get tired. We get tired from the decisions that we need to make, from the things that we need to interpret, information, problem solving, critical thinking. As business owners and working in any kind of business, this is what we do. It's hard work, which is why we get tired. We then go into decision fatigue. Too many decisions called cognitive overload, which then leads to poor decisions. And we, unfortunately, including myself, and I know this, do make poor decisions at a certain time when it's just too hard. There is, just quickly, a study on weight loss programs, and they're talking about how weight loss programs fail generally in the evening. You know, we are so good all day, and it doesn't necessarily have to come to weight loss programs, just eating well in general. We're so good all day. You know, morning, great breakfast, morning tea, snacks are great, lunch. And then we come to the evening, we've had a hard day. We've had a massive day. And I just want to grab something quick. Just want to grab some takeaways. And we make bad decisions because we're exhausted. That's also physical exhaustion. But there is a correlation between the way that we actually think and the information, the sheer volume of information we consume during the day and the decisions that we make. So what is the problem? One of the problems I see pretty much on a daily basis is that we naturally communicate in a way that is default for us. So what's comfortable for us? So I'm a really big personality. Those of you that know me are probably giggling. I'm a massive personality. I am loud. I'm not as loud as normal today because I got a little bit of a sore throat. But I'm really, really loud. And I feel that, you know, it makes people happy. And I want to make people happy, but sometimes I'm just too much. And I need to recognize that, which I do. So if we go into the Myers-Briggs, which I'm not a huge fan of anymore, obviously, because it's sort of old and, you know, sort of an old fundamental work, sort of protocol, I guess, process. But if we look, it's language that we know, extroversion, introversion. When I'm talking to someone who is definitely an introvert, I need to change the way that I communicate, because it's all about them. It's what's making them comfortable. It's not easy for me, but it makes them comfortable. We have a tendency to assume that everyone else wants to communicate the same way we do. That is just not the case at all. We underestimate the importance of personality traits. We are hyper connected. We are easily disengaged. We're being pushed. We're being pulled. We're online. Our digital literacy now is paramount. We need to make sure that we are being seen wherever we are. We've got emails coming. We've got instant messaging. There is so much communication that is happening that we need to answer. And there's an expectation that we do it, and we do it within a certain period of time. We just don't have the time to keep going at the rate that we do. We concentrate on the business thing rather than the people thing. And this is something I see constantly also. Even when we're working business, we are talking about people. We are selling to people. We are working with people. We are helping people. So we need to bring that back, wind that back, and concentrate on the people thing. And body language quite often is difficult to read. We're now in a hybrid world. Managing teams, managing our business, that is online and in a virtual world as well as in a physical world. I say here, we are cueless, not clueless, cueless. Those nonverbal cues are sometimes quite hard to read, especially when we're online. And not everyone likes being online. So we need to communicate and understand people better and in a different way. So how can we guide decision making when we're all doing so much thinking? All this. The answer is that we design an environment to guide people to the right decisions by using a universal language. Now, I did talk about, just before, we all know it, and we talk about introversion and extroversion. I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert. Are you really? We just use it as a language. We actually don't always understand the fundamentals. But these guys, these 12 guys, the archetypes, are a universal inborn language that we use on a day-to-day basis. I've written an ebook about these, about business archetypes and how you can use them, not just in your business, not just in the way that you communicate to clients and customers and potential buyers, but also in your personal world and in your personal relationships as well. They are 12 really important guys. So what are archetypes? They are universal inborn models of people or personalities that derive from the collective unconscious. So not just our subconscious, our collective unconscious, and play a role in influencing human motivations, emotions, and behaviors. So they're based on the writings and really were developed by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. You'll hear about Jungian archetypes, Jungian philosophy. That's Carl Jung, sometimes called Jung, but it is Jung. In the early 20th century, actually worked with Sigmund Freud. He was a student of Sigmund Freud. They worked together on these. He formulated a theory called a collective unconscious. So think about sometimes when you hear a noise, or you hear a smell, hear a noise, you smell something, you see something, reminds you of something, reminds you of a time that you achieved something. It could even be, unfortunately, a bad time, or you smell something that reminds you of a significant thing, or there's a pattern or a symbol that is relevant for you. There's something that is significant in a way that, evokes some kind of emotion. You go, geez, oh, I remember that, or that reminds me of something. That's part of your archetype. That's part of your makeup. It's part of your collective unconscious. We all have an archetype, and we all have an aesthetic archetype. I haven't got pink on today. I normally wear pink. Been doing a lot of pink lately. And also it's breast cancer month, and my background is medicine and in oncology. So for me, that's very important that I support those charities as well. So I normally wear pink in October because it's breast cancer month. Now, for me, that's part of my archetype. People know me as Leanne. You're a big personality. You wear pink. You've got funky hair. You wear big glasses. When they see something, they'll say, oh, this reminded me of you. And I'm sure you've said that as well to people. In fact, the person that showed me these glasses had bought them, a phenomenal colleague of mine, and said, oh my gosh, Leanne, you will love these. As my archetype. That's what we want to talk to, but we need to understand ourselves first and then identify the archetypes in others. And then when we do that, we are starting to use a totally different language in our business, and this is what is actually the missing link. So the archetype, the word, comes from the Greek archetypos, or original pattern. I'm actually Greek, funnily enough. And this is the derivative of the word. The Oxford Dictionary defines archetype as a symbol, theme, setting, or character type that recurs in different times and places in myth, literature, folklore, dreams, and rituals so frequently or prominently as to suggest that it embodies some essential element of universal human experience. So it's exactly what I just said before. There are things that we recognize, that we see, that it evokes this emotion, this power. We don't use archetypes enough. They are there. There are quite a number of books about archetypes, but they are an absolute powerhouse when it comes to understanding your customer and your clients and bringing in business. So let's break them down. Now, archetypes, and if you are doing some reading, because I'll always reference this, there are loads. There are loads of archetypes. If you read, there's hundreds and hundreds of them. However, we can't learn hundreds and hundreds. They were broken down to 60. And the work of Carl Jung and his Jungian archetypes was that he thought we need to be able to recognize these in people. So I'm going to create 12 groups of 5. I actually have little cards that are this. I've got 60 cards and 12 groups with the 5 in each. They're really cute. And I use them sometimes when I'm doing physical workshops and in a lot of the other work that I do. But we're talking about the 12 groups, and this is what I want to teach you, and I want you to learn and to be able to implement yourself, because we can handle 12. And if you do the archetype quiz, you'll be a 12, one of 12. We tend to have a primary and a secondary archetype, even though there is distinct characteristics and styles of each. The archetype quiz, and I'll put, if you haven't done it, I will put the link up and the QR code towards the end so you can do it to discover yours. But I want to give you the tool so you can also identify others. For me, I am a sage. That is my primary archetype, and we'll be going through the definition of each of these very shortly. And I also have a secondary archetype, which is a creator. Those of you who know me will go, yeah, Leanne, that makes sense. And that's what I want you to be able to do with your people. So understanding your audience is one of the key ingredients for success. However, it might sound straightforward, but it is a certain skill to be able to truly identify your customer's natural behavior. Now, I do a lot of work in profiling. This was going to be another event that I will do. I've been asked to talk about different types of profiling, not just the archetypical personality traits that we're talking about today. And I do a lot of facial recognition profiling using the muscles of the face to be able to determine personality traits, personas, and also translating that into AI. But for today, I want to really set the fundamentals for you as this tool for moving forward for success. So let's look at the 12 archetypes. We have 4, I want to break them down into quarters, and there will be 3 archetypes in each. So the first group, we have what's called the innocent, the explorer, and the sage. The second group, we have the jester, the lover, and the everyman. The third group is the hero, the rebel, and the magician, also called the alchemist. And the last quadrant is the ruler, the creator, and the caregiver. So each of these break down into, as I said, quadrants. we have two axes, an x-axis, and we have a y-axis. The x-axis is belonging to independence. The y is stability to mastery. Now, what we do is we tend to fall into a particular archetype, but we do move along that axis. And we can teeter like a seesaw, but we have a absolute significant and predominant way of operating. So with the innocent, the explorer, and the sage, they are much part of the independence. So they work alone. They are very, they make decisions on their own. They don't need to have a lot of influence in a way to create their world, and they're very much research driven and like to be able to find out their answers. We're going to be going into this a little bit more, but I'm just giving you an overview now so you see how they fit into each of these quadrants. We then have the belonging. So the belonging is the jester, the lover, and the everyman. So they like to be around people. They do rely on support and are very much in terms of being grouped. They are a personality that likes to belong and have others belong with them. The mastery, like to be the best at what they do. The hero, the rebel, and the magician. They will perfect. I'm not saying they're perfectionists or they like perfection, but they will perfect what they do. They want to be the best in what they do. They're not a jack of all trades, master or none. They are actually a master. And then you have stability. So that homeliness, the ruler, the creator, the caregiver, they have a tribe. The ruler, and this is where a lot of people get a little bit tricked, is the ruler isn't so much the boss. The ruler is the ruler of a kingdom. They want to be the support network and be able to provide for their kingdom. So they like the stability of a kingdom. The creator likes stability, the caregiver. So this is what we're going to be working towards and talking about in each of these. So when we talk about archetypes, we often talk about brands. So you hear about branding archetypes. What kind of brands represent a certain archetype? We take this a step further and go into business archetypes. We want to know about the person. But a brand, and quite often, if you've got your own business, you are the brand. You are the representation. You're the ambassador. So what is it that you are showcasing, and how are you actually using your genius to magnetize people to come to you, to gravitate towards how you work? Now, each of these brands here are an example of a particular archetype, and we're going to go through these because I want you to be able to relate to your behavior, your customers' behaviors to a particular brand. So obviously there's a lot of us on the webinar, and those that are listening can go through this, and you guys, when you listen back as well, and actually go, right, I think this brand is this. Now we're going to go through it so you'll know, but there are certain ways that even logos, the colors of logos, the shapes of logos, the geometry of logos, the taglines that come and the slogans that come with this, that actually represent a certain archetype. So let's break these down. So Dove, the brand Dove, is an innocent archetype. And the communication of the innocent is as you can see on the right. So we're going to talk about the voice of this particular archetype, the customer itself, the goals, the fears, colors and fonts. So colors and fonts that you may use yourself, but also that you may see in other businesses, in collaborators, other areas of business that you gravitate towards. So with the innocent, the voice of an innocent is simple, optimistic, honest, humble, and cheerful. The customer is hopeful. They are encouraging. They're joyous. They're simple. They're clear. So I want you to think about that. How do you resonate your brand and your business to the innocent customer? Remember when I said one of the problems, there's a number of problems that we have, is that we want to communicate in a way that's a default, that is natural. We have a default bias, so in the way that's natural for us. But that's not always the case, because we need to communicate to those, and those people need to resonate with us. So what is it that we need to do? So once we know what the customer is like, and we have identified them, we know what we then need to do. So the goals of the customer: happiness, morality, positivity, and purity. Their fears, anguish, complexity, deceit, and negativity. So one thing I want you to think about is, when we are talking about connecting with customers that are an innocent, that we want to make sure that we're solving anguish, complexity, deceit, and negativity. And we're creating happiness, morale, we've got that moral compass, positivity, and purity, because it's important that they resonate with us in that respect. And colors and fonts that you generally see with brands and businesses of innocent archetype, you can see the colors there on the screen, but the fonts are generally sans serif fonts. So they're very, very, they are quite simple. There isn't any sort of elaborateness to them. They're not elaborate. They're not a display font. They're quite particular. They're quite straight. And they are very, very direct, very, very simple, very neat. And then we go into the Sage. So BBC, Harvard, Oxford, they are generally the brands that you see with the Sage type. But communicating with a Sage, so I said I was a Sage, so communicating with me, for instance, if I was your customer, I was to become your client. How do you need to be able to communicate with a Sage? So the voice of a Sage is knowledgeable, factual, decisive, authoritative, researched. They have done their research. In fact, a Sage customer, and we talk about in sales psych, these days, a customer will actually travel through the sales cycle a lot further than what we used to originally, because we've got so much information at our fingertips. We've got so much knowledge around us. We've got so many people that are knowledgeable as well that we can tap into. That a Sage in particular will absolutely tap into that before they then engage to buy something. So we say that customers generally are 70% now throughout the sales cycle, the sales process, before they engage with someone. There are ways to change that, obviously, in terms of nudging principles and using cognitive biases, but that's generally what happens. A Sage absolutely will be at least 70%. So how do you then engage with someone that has a lot of knowledge potentially about your product and your
Gary. Hello, Mick. How are you?
Okay, guys, can if you don't mind, please mute. Thank you. And the customer: educated, intelligent, wise, understood, captivated. So there needs to be something that wows them, something that they don't know. The goals: wisdom, intelligent, information, influence. Their fears: ignorance, insanity, misinformation, and inaccuracy. Have you ever had someone that is you've tried to pull the wool over someone's eyes, heaven forbid, but you've actually sort of, and a lot of dominant salespeople, and I'm talking dominant traits, will say, "Oh, just wing it." You can't wing it with a Sage. You need to know your stuff. You need to make sure that you're highly researched and you know what's going on. So, and you shouldn't wing it with anybody, to be honest. But a Sage in particular will pick that up. And that is something that will easily just turn them around and go, "See you later, I'm going somewhere else." So fonts and colors that you see with Sage are generally sort of bold, earthy, and organic. And they do like a little bit of flair. So you will see some serif fonts that might have a little bit of a swoop. I mean, BBC doesn't, Harvard doesn't, so does Oxford University in their font. You'll see that. So it gives you an indication that if you're working with another business or going to potentially partner or collaborate, that they are potentially in that Sage category. Explorer, the last one of the independence group, Jeep, is a great brand. And again, very earthy, very down-to-earth colors. Almost a little bit dirty in a way. The voice, very open-minded. They're very resourceful. They're exciting. They're fearless, and they are daring. The customer themselves are adventurous, generally cultured, limitless, amazed, and alive. And they're willing to co-create. So they're actually really good collaborators. They will explore with you, and they're open to ideas. Their goals. They love adventure. They love exploring, self-discovery, liberation. Their fears, confinement. So not being allowed to express their opinions or being open-minded, immobility, incarceration, and being too cautious. So they're not really risk averse. They will push boundaries. A lot of them are striking innovators that will, open pathways and create and pave ways for you. So, explorers are really good business partners. They're also sans serif font, so very basic, very minimalistic, very neat. Okay, going into the stability. So belonging, sorry. So we've got the Jester. M&Ms, oh my gosh. I mean, even just looking at the brand of M&Ms with the little M&Ms that have characters, they come to life. They have the ads that make us laugh. I mean, I used to do not as much now, a lot of traveling globally, and I think of the M&M ad where they're in the toilet cubicle and they're trying to hide. It's just, it's funny. The voice is fun, loving, optimistic, playful, enthusiastic, expressive. They love bringing smiles to people's faces. They're playful, energetic, entertained, amused, and giddy. So they love to be in a world of fun. It's not just about business. You've got to have fun doing it as well. If you are too strict and too regimented, I guess, and too structured, they'll have trouble with that. Their goals: entertainment, enjoyment, uplifting, positivity. Their fears: boredom, gloom, sadness, negativity. A Jester is an ultimate optimist. I talk about in my book, when I created the periodic table of sales, one of the elements of sales is being an optimist. No one buys from a pessimist. Optimism is a really important element in that periodic table, and the Jester does this brilliantly. So we've got bright colors with the Jester. Most of the color tend to go more the happy, the reds and the pinks. You'll see a lot of brands, and even with those dark, rich colors as well. And they do love flowery fonts. So you can even see just with that M&M logo, you've got a little bit of a lip on the M's. They're using the and. Rather than the word and, the symbol and. Again, symbolic. Archetypes are very symbolic. So it's a fun, loving archetype. Moving on to the lover. So the lover, Chanel is a great example. It loves to bring that sensualness. They're very empathetic, very soothing, affectionate, and warm. Now, I'm not talking about Chanel in the case of designer. It's not so much that. It's the whole story behind Chanel is about bringing people together. The customer itself is excited, spellbound, aroused. It loves passion and desire. They're very passionate about what they do. They love what they do. They will talk about it a lot. They want to tell you all about it. To a point where sometimes okay, that's great. We can see that you're so, passionate, and you have this innate desire, this intrinsic desire. They want to bring everybody into their world. Their goals are closeness, indulgence, affection, and love. They are very loyal. Fears of rejection, isolation, invisibility, and contempt. So making sure that they are seen. A lover needs a psychological safe space to be able to create ideas with you, to be able to work with you. They will need to be able to trust you. I mean, everyone needs to be able to trust you, but a lover in particular, it will take a little bit longer for them to engage. Once they are engaged, they will be clients and customers for a long time. But you need to be able to provide that space for them and let them into your world. Colors, in terms of very colorful, again, more into that, the reds and the pinks. If you're looking at, Chanel itself is obviously not, but the essence behind the lover archetype is these colors. And they love flowery fonts and script fonts as well, even though Chanel itself is very very neat and very bold. The more flamboyant and elaborate, the better. Everyman. So the everyman, again, part of belonging, very homely, friendly, humble, honest, practical, authentic. The customer wants to be understood. They want to be included. They want to be warm. They want to feel part of a group. They want to be valued. They are really good team members. They're actually they're very authentic, and they're very reliable and very practical. The goals are to connect. They want equality, friendship, and inclusion. They love brainstorming. And every man will come together with you and come up with some great ideas, but they will do it together. They won't do it on their own. They will need support around them. That's where you can come in and help. Their fears are exclusion, isolation, hostility, and disassociation. So they're very much the essence of that belonging quadrant, wanting to make sure that they're included in the business. From a color perspective, there's multiple of colors. Actually, they're quite bright, but they're moving colors, and they also like very neat and very authentic, practical sans serif fonts. So again, if you look at Target's, very plain, very bold, and they and very striking. Hero, Nike, of course. What is it about a hero? They're very confident, they're honest, they're candid, they're brave, they push boundaries. So the whole mastery quadrant, which is what we're going into now, they really love pushing boundaries, sometimes too far. So you need to be able to manage that. And also they're a good partner in pushing those, but you also need someone with you that is going to pull them back. The customer itself is inspired. So they want something that hasn't been done before. We talk about our UVP, USP, a unique value proposition and unique selling proposition. This is where is at its mastered. So what is it that you do uniquely? They don't want someone that does what the next door neighbor does or what they've seen before. What is it that you've got that's very different that will actually capture them? So being inspired, empowered, motivated, driven, courageous, their goals, bravery, growth, development, and defense. Fears, incompetence, cowardice, deterioration, vulnerability. So they really have a problem with being people being incompetent. If they don't think that you are a trusted source, they will move on. They like plain fonts. You've got the Nike tick here, very bold, more clinical in a way in terms of their colors. Blue is a very safe and clinical and confident color. They are very, very neat, very process driven, very structured, but push. Rebel, they're a disruptor. We talk about disruptive selling, talk about disruptive business models. The rebel is someone that, again, remember these are mastery, like the hero, they want to push boundaries, but they'll actually really push them to the point where they will start arguing that even if it's not right. So what happens is there's a commitment bias with the rebel. So what happens with commitment bias is when we commit to something, we go, yes, this is what I want to do, and this is the reasons why. Even if it's not in their best interest, they will use logic, that's 7% of logic, to actually argue why they committed to it. So we need to take that into account, but they're extremely, extremely raw and extremely candid. What you see is what you get. Rebellious, stimulated, through it, unconventional, and they're a disruptor. Their goal is to change. I love this. They're change makers. They love freedom. Revenge, not a great word, but it is what is part of the rebel archetype. We're looking at Harley Davidson. Obviously, there's a lot of bikies that use Harley Davidson for that power. And we talk about vengeance. and that independence. And their fears: conformity, complacency, acceptance, and dependence. Their fonts that you'll see, again, are very straightforward, neat, tidy, bold. And again, those earthy colors, but strong orange, strong red, deep brown. You'll see those kinds of brands that ignite that excitement, that push. And now we're stepping into, then we've got the magician. Sorry, last one of the mastery. The magician, or also said alchemist. You quite often see them as called the alchemist. Disney is a great example from a brand perspective. And what is it that Disney is trying to do? The voice: expansive, moving, articulate, expressive, and discovery. They're like they're in a lab, and putting different potions together like an alchemist, and poof, something comes, and it's just fantastic. And they love looking at different areas and different ingredients to come up with some kind of master solution. That's the magician. They're very, very creative, not like a creator, just creative in different ways. They're cutting edge, they're fascinated, they will try, they're intrigued, they're visionary, they're early adopters. So quite often, as running a business, you have customers that might want to try something, or what we call wait and see. They're happy to give it a go. That's the language that you want to speak. Are you happy to try this for a certain period of time? Are you happy to be the first to give this a go? They would love that. That's the language that you want to use when you identify a magician. Goals: knowledge, vision, belief, discovery. Their fears are stagnation, standing still, not moving forward, not being able to develop, not being able to grow. They actually don't like uncertainty, so it needs to be proven. Doubt, ignorance. And again, they are a bit more flamboyant. So you'll see serif and script fonts. Disney's what we call a display font, and extraordinarily colorful and flamboyant. You often see embellishment as well in those kinds of people, and in those kinds of brands. And then the last quadrant is the stability. So we have the ruler. I talked about the ruler not as the boss, not as the elitist, even though there is a sense of eliteness. They have a kingdom. They are the leader of their team and of their tribe. They're commanding, they're refined, they're articulate, they're powerful, and they're elite. But they're seen as a mentor. They're seen as someone that can guide them, as role models. The customer likes to be successful. They themselves are leaders. They have authority. They're exclusive. They have status. Their goals are power, status, success, and wealth, but not in an unethical way. They want to work with someone to lift themselves and to lift them. Success together, status together. They like working with people who are accomplished and have that trust. And their fears: insignificance, failure. They really struggle with failure. I'm not saying failure is a bad thing. It's not. We learn from failure. We all need to have failure. But they do struggle with that. Poverty and destitution. And serif font. So a little bit more, you can see Rolex, which is a phenomenal ruler archetype. Isn't just a bland, straight, clear, asymmetric font. There's more to it. And you can see the colors. They're quite religious colors as well. You've got those deep purples, those jade greens, cerise colors that show, sort of authority and that status. And we have the creator. And I've got Lego here because Lego is so much fun and creative, and it's got a puffy logo, and uses puffy fonts. And it's a lot of fun. So the voice of a creator is inspirational, unique, descriptive, visual, and actually provocative, which is, I love that word because it is. And I actually have written an article that has been described as a provocative article in sales. And I love that because it gets people intrigued and it inspires them. The customer, your creator customer is amazed, inspired, creative, willing, envious in a way. Envious because they actually want to use that skill or that color or that for them. Their goals: creation, originality, vision, and imagination. Their fears are duplication. turning up to a wedding and, oh my God, someone's got the same dress as you. You know, those kinds of things, like, oh my gosh, because they put so much thought in creating the outfit. Familiarity, disillusion, and indifference. Script or handwritten fonts, or you know, really colorful and fun fonts. If you see someone that is like that, or a business that is like that, that's how they will project themselves. And of course, the brightest and brightest of colors, happy colors that ignite, and colors that you know, just put a smile on your face. And then we have the caregiver. So the caregiver communication, I've used UNICEF for this example. They are very caring caregiver. They're caring. They're considerate, thoughtful, kind, generous. The customer wants to be loved. They like safety, security. They want to be looked after. They're the ones that have the biggest problems, and they've gone to lots of people to help have their problems solved. But people have struggled to solve them. So what is it that you can do, and with your expertise, to engage with these customers and these clients to solve their problem? Because that's what they're looking for. They're craving for that. They want support, help, service, and gratitude. And their fears are helplessness, neglect, blame, anguish. Script and handwritten fonts also, because they are softer, and you can see the pastels. I mean, obviously UNICEF itself is not pastel, but the whole environment or ecosystem, a lot of not-for-profits, a lot of volunteer organizations, they have, you know, a lot of these softened colors around them. Even if they have a very strong font, they'll have a softened color around them. So the outcomes of using this, I mean, I could talk about archetypes forever, and I love them, but I hope this has sort of given you a bit of an understanding. And some of the outcomes that we get is we're more confident in the way that we speak. We come out of our comfort zone of what is natural for us to communicate, and we're now communicating on a different level. It accelerates trust. I must have mentioned trust many, many times during that. Talking about, you know, these archetypes, how we develop that. We have longer, more engaging, more dynamic conversations with our customers. We build stronger, more successful relationships and longer relationships. So when we're talking about selling, we're talking about in business, it's sustainable. You know, anyone can sell something once. I say this all the time. We can flick a sale, but how do we do this long term for 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, 10 years? You know, building these strong collaborative relationships as well, and partnerships, becoming an ambassador, becoming influential, becoming a thought leader, becoming the go-to in your industry and beyond. It increases your business, your visibility of your business when you're talking to your audience in this way, your brand exposure. A lot of you that have businesses, you are the brand, you are the identity, you are the archetype. You need to bring this onto your business and showcase this and showcase your genius. Identifies you as a thought leader and expert in your field. Those of you that receive my newsletter, our newsletter, called The Scoop, you know, I talk about bringing the boldest and brightest minds together. It's not about just me imparting knowledge on you, but it's using your skill to impart knowledge on others. And when we bring that together, we do great business and we become extremely successful. So what is your archetype? For those of you that haven't done it and identified what you are, we need to know what we are first before we then go into understanding others. So there's the link there. There is also the QR code. Also, for you guys,